So, welcome to the podcast. This is Eddie Kays. Welcome, Eddie. Good to see you.
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much.
Eddie's a hypnotherapist, a past life regression therapist, between lives therapist, and he practices spirit releasement. So, part of the conversation today is going to be about his healer's journey. And part of also what I'll be doing with this podcast moving forward is interviewing authors about their books. So, Eddie is the author of a book, The Creationship, an intimate relationship with creation. It uses 7 principles of Providence to unlock your potential, co create your dreams, and live a life of purpose. So Eddie's got an interesting background as a culinary artist, a permaculturalist, a herbalist, and he's done work in energy healing from Reiki, quantum touch, Qigong, and massage. And it's really interesting how all of that then brought him to taking professional level advanced study and practice as a past life regression therapist. Firstly, whereabouts are you based? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so currently I'm in just north of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. And however, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the middle of the Canadian prairies, in a province called Saskatchewan. I met a woman. I met this person now in hindsight for a very specific reason. Um, this is where spiritual releasement therapy and um, the past lives and the between lives and all that kind of stuff was seeded in my consciousness. I didn't know it then. I had no idea the concept of any of these things yet. I had never been exposed to them. But now in hindsight, I can see that this was the seed moment because this particular person was a um, emotionally complicated individual with all sorts of different kinds of challenges, psychological challenges, emotional challenges, but was trying to be deeply spiritual. And there was a moment one day after her trying to apply for a job, she got into this rage state. And um, she went into this trance that I couldn't understand. She was delirious and doesn't remember it at all, and started channeling this stuff. And it was like she was predicting things in the future and the past and all these different nuances. And it was really, really interesting to me because it sort of frightened me, but I was also very like, I was just very interested in what was going on. I thought, well, clearly there's something more to reality than just the physical body. I understand quantum physics and that we are we are largely energy. We are basically light beings. The DNA, for instance, is basically a photon director. It just directs photonic energy.
At
Go ahead.
this stage, had you been working with Reiki, quantum touch, Qigong? Was that,
So
or
this
was
is
it
the
like,
initiation for
right?
that.
Okay.
So because of this person's um, health challenges, psychological challenges, emotional challenges, I wanted to help her through this, and I didn't have any idea how because psychiatric interventions had no effect. In fact, made it worse. So I started looking into, and I'm at the time now I'm probably 25 years old. I started looking into various modalities that can help with spiritual related and mental emotional related issues. So I got into Reiki first because it was sort of some low hanging fruit. I'd heard of it somehow. I can't remember where I was introduced to it. So I started looking into that, and I got my Reiki certifications and began practicing that, and it had some results. There was some. It felt like there was something there that could be utilized, and but it didn't quite have the long lasting results that I was looking for. It didn't get to the root of the things. And so I started expanding in similar energy modalities. I started looking into quantum touch, which was a very fascinating modality that was in a similar vein of Reiki, a similar kind of energy channeling. Qigong, which is the ancient art of breathing and the movement and the energy centers and in the Eastern world. Very fascinating stuff and very, very powerful, especially within myself. I started feeling like I was on point. Like I finally found how to integrate those center channels, how to make sure that my energy centers are aligned and moving properly, not stagnant, almost like energy needs to move, not hold up in areas of the body and stuff like that. So,
Well,
um,
just one observation there. That's an important thing where, and this what Eddie's talking about. This is an initiation that a lot of people have. So I have a similar kind of experience where so people spontaneously went into a trance around you,
yeah,
and then and it leaves questions that can only be answered by further study. How
hmm
can you release tension in the body through body work and massage? Good,
hmm
but this is a spiritual issue, not a physical muscular tension issue. I need to
that's
know
right.
more. So then it puts
hmm
you on the path to quantum touch and Reiki and energy centers moving within. But the other key thing that you've brought up there is that didn't know how to heal her or deal with her at that moment when she went into a spontaneous trance. But you also mentioned then there was some sort of rage in her,
hmm
or that can create any kind of confusion, fear in us. And so the key then becomes, not necessarily what modality can I learn to apply to them, but or even if we do that, we also need to learn what can I do to manage my own energy and state. So that,
Yes.
and that's the key for any healer. On one hand, it's like in order to heal people, we need to heal ourselves, which is true to a degree, but we also just need to manage our energy in the moment where we are giving the healing. So the things that we do,
Absolutely.
there are things that we do to people. There's a state of being we need to have while we're doing that. And so being
hmm
able to regulate your own chi, breathing well, and staying centered within your calm, clear, confident, peaceful energy is important. And so that's part of what you then were able to learn by being forced to or pushed to learn these other new modalities.
I couldn't get there with this person, and it only ended up getting worse. And there was a lot of devolution that began, de-evolution that began happening there. Um, so we parted ways, and I went off on my own journey again. And I there was something that I started to recognize, and that is the individual is within a much larger context. And if that larger context is out of assortment, it can have a very big impact on the individual within that larger context. So essentially what I'm saying is that our environments have a deep impact on how, who, and what we are.
So you can understand things. And once you've got that lesson, you can move to the next. And that lesson can
Yes.
then be being able to help and heal other people. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I think healers need to have that a real dynamic range of professional experience and personal experience. So, how did you then move into the idea for the creationship?
During this entire process, of at this point 15 years of musings on the journey I'd been on, connecting pieces together of the various philosophies, the various religions, the various sciences that I had been, and the life experiences that I had gone through, it started to distill itself in this interesting thing that was sort of downloading through me, um, for lack of a better term, and it was related to this concept of providence. And it's a very interesting notion that it's essentially, I can, if you want, I can just read this is the book here. It's not you may not be able to get it in print right now. It was printed in 2018. You can still get it in on Google Books if you want. But the premise, and I'll just read the back here just to kind of give you a framework as to what brought this about, the questions, the emotions that were coming through me at the time, trying to get a feel for this is, have you ever
Yeah.
wondered why some days everything just seems to fall into place, or why when you're trying to start something new, everything you need just has a way of showing up? Do you think these experiences are just coincidences or maybe random synchronicities? Think again. What if what if something is going on behind the scenes, something much more majestic, mysterious, and dare I say intimate? What if, without knowing it, you're in a dialogue with creation itself? What if you could hear this unconscious conversation, understanding its language, and become an active participant in this narrative? Welcome to the wondrous world of Providence. The 7 principles of Providence that I've been able to distill will help train your body to recognize co-creation in action. It's all about alignment. Once you understand the house rules, the rest is history. Life gets great, relationships start to work, finances add up, health advances exponentially, love flows deeply, intelligence soars. If you knew that heaven or paradise, nirvana, Valhalla, etc., is right here, right now, what would you do with your life? I encourage you to begin an intimate relationship with creation and watch your life unfold with magic, beauty, grace, abundance, love, and wisdom. This day and every day for the rest of your life. This is your creationship. So, that being said, that preface is how I felt at the time. It's like all this stuff is happening so perfectly. Everything, when I think back, it was all just in these ideal alignments. What is that? And how can we engage that consciously? How can we
Mm.
engage that in a way that is repeatable, not just by accident? How can we do that? And so I started some deep study into the philosophical nuances of the saints and sages of our past, and pulling out, and not just the saints and sages, but other people that were really successful for some reason in their lives. And there's plenty of examples of these in the book,
Mm.
but it showed me that there is this distillation of 7 key principles that when we actively engage with, we begin to consciously engage with this engine of providence, which I would say is, if source, creator, God, whatever you identify with as that ultimate presence, if it had a right hand, its right hand would be providence, and it moves things in so many mysterious ways for you, and it's something that you can help direct. If it had a left hand, that would be grace. It's the sacred feminine principle. If providence is the sacred masculine principle, grace is the sacred feminine principle, and it's not something that you engage with. You can't direct it. You can't participate with it. It's actually automatic, and it's something that it's so merciful, and it happens whether you deserve it or not, whether you've acted in a particular way or not, or anything to that effect. So, I wanted to get these principles down as the sacred masculine principles so that I can at least get into alignment with some of the fundamental, let's just say, script or code or behavioral inherency in alignment with life, so that
Yeah.
grace had an easier job with me.
Yeah.
Put it that way, right?
Okay, interesting. For me, just a couple of things that spring to mind. First, so you can look back and see how everything was perfectly aligned and
Yes.
got me here. But
Yes.
one of the tricks can be at the time, it doesn't often feel like that.
Not at all.
And that can be the real trick. And so I think that, but I think it's such a powerful principle and understanding to have, with, while things are happening, that this is happening because it needs to happen, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's part of a divine plan, and you're under some
Yes.
kind of divine protection.
Oh,
uh
yes.
yeah, so it is, and yeah, so is that some, because that's the great challenge, isn't it? It's easy to look back and see how everything was,
Hindsight's
aligned
always
at
2020.
exactly. And,
Mm.
once you know the ending, but most of the times we're just stuck in the middle of stuff going,
Yeah.
why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be
Sure.
happening.
Yeah.
And
Can't see the
yeah,
forest through the trees kind of
yeah.
scenario. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because as soon as I published this book, I was doing promotions and various things, and um, I had met so my current wife uh, had been running and runs a YouTube channel for it's an ASMR style channel that is meant to help with stress and relaxation, but from a spiritual vantage point. And so and just the synchronicity of it is fascinating because it's in her name. Um, put it this way, so many little nuances, little synchronistic things had started to show up specifically with her for some reason. And I thought to myself, gosh, is this real? Like, this person lives across the world, and what am I thinking, trying to engage with this? And but lo and behold, it was a very almost seamless process of what I recognized at the time to be some very deep emocio-psychic connections that began happening almost immediately, and the flow of the events were so seamless. And
So actually, where does she live
she
across
lives
the
in
world?
at this. Yeah, she lived in the UK.
Okay.
And I'm in Canada.
So you're literally
And
watching a YouTube channel from a woman in the UK, feeling
yeah,
connected, but no possibility to speak, go out, swipe
no,
right, go on a
oh my
date.
goodness, yeah, exactly right.
In order to connect, that would require. So Providence is actually an interesting word, one which isn't heard too much, but it means the protective care of God, the protective care of God or of nature as a spiritual power. And
Yes,
so one might think, you could call provident, there could be pretty ordinary things that happen. You could credit providence,
completely.
but then there's some
Yes.
pretty extraordinary things that could happen where the only rational explanation is a divine override. So how did you bridge that gap from liking someone on the other side of the world to being able to connect?
Well, what's interesting about that is I have found her content really good, and at first I didn't have any other than just it was really helping me sleep. It was helping me relax. It was helping me stay in the flow at the time.
Okay.
And I reached out, and there was a Patreon, which is like a form of you can donate to a creator's work,
Yeah.
and on a monthly basis. And so I became a patron, and I started talking to her, encouraging her, and coming up with cool little notions and ideas and stuff, and
Mm.
just saying thank you and really offering praise for this work. And um, one thing led to another in conversations and this and that, and I started. So I, you know, one of my I was into horoscopes and numerology, and I I did what I called a stone casting. It's an ancient druidic approach to things. And what I did was I took a series of stones and I cast them down, and I created this little thing, and it told me a story. And this story that was being downloaded through me, I wasn't trying to present it at all. It was just something that I was allowing the subconscious mind to allow my conscious mind to see. It mapped out this sort of group of individuals that were core parts of my life. And the stone that represented the way there was a stone, a very small stone, and it reminded me of her. Just for some reason, it just reminded me of her. The way that it was, the energy that she presents to the world, and it just so happened to be in a place correlated in this particular stone casting to a direct relationship with me. I didn't know what that relationship was. It could have been just a strong friendship. It could have been a deep friendship. It could have been a relationship. I didn't know. So I shared this with her, and it was interesting at first because I didn't know exactly what it meant. She didn't know, but I started getting again more and more downloads and all these intuitive impressions and stuff, and we just started hitting it off. It just ended up working out that her and I both thought, well, this might be something that we can figure out. Doesn't seem plausible at the moment, but she ended up coming over to visit, and it was like it was magic. Everything clicked. Um, I think I proposed to her on like the first day or something silly like that, which I look back on now thinking, gosh, why did you do that, you moron? But it was a fun experience, and we had fun with it. And um, she ended up being and is the person that inspired my journey into hypnotherapy, because she is an intuitive empath and akashic psychic that she wasn't fully aware of, but in participating with her and her work, I recognized and began to encourage. And in the work that we were doing together, which on the side was, I had started doing some research into hypnotherapy, and hypnosis and past lives and spirit releasement and between lives. I'd come across, many different authors, that were presenting this work to the world, Michael Newton and others. And it really started to inspire me to think, gosh, if this is what's going on under the surface, this all now makes sense. Now it's all clicking and it's starting to make sense. I need to participate in that. This is where my calling is. And I felt it so strongly. There was nothing that I've ever felt so fully gravitated towards as a modality for bringing out the best understanding, healing, subconscious clarity, and superconscious wisdom. It just felt so right, and so I started doing various amounts of research. I took online hypnotherapy courses from all sorts of places, and started applying these with my wife, and we had some extraordinary experiences. And the best experiences started happening after I actually took your Udemy course, actually your series of Udemy courses. I took all of them because it just the way that you present the information, the way that you present the service flow, like the different series of sessions, how you do it, how you bring somebody to their like in the first session, you're going to these beautiful positive states that your subconscious serves up specifically for you, and in the second scenario, you're going through the sort of the more challenging moments, the things that are like kind of like the things that you're there presenting with that are the issue, and then in that third session, you're going into those beautiful therapeutic resolutions that have immediate and lasting effects in the overarching theme of what you came to present with. And to me, that was just that's where it's at. Like, I've been through so many different healing modalities, from allopathic to the most extreme on the other side of alternative modalities, and nothing had been as effective in healing, or at very least, I'm not sure if the word healing is appropriate, but rewiring and reintegrating the natural elements of our of the glow that is meant to be our soul, imbued in a body, in a polycultural experience, in this beautiful world that we live in. Nothing creates more clarity in that pathway than this that I've found to date. And so this is where I am now, and I've
This is one of the reasons I wanted to speak, because you told me you'd taken my Udemy courses, and you said I had unexpectedly excellent results
yes,
with both my wife and my mother, and you'd followed the
blown away.
process well. So there are a number of things. You had that sense of connection and calling, and you've had that along the way. But to me, it showed how I had a connection to that, but then I moved on. And so by the time that came to do this, you are able to do it with a talent and an ability which is not ordinary, and it's the kind of thing where your past skills already showed up, and so it is what you've done, but also this concept of providence that you wrote about, the sense that there's a protective care of God or nature as a spiritual power. I
Mm-hmm.
think that really helps you in your sessions, and it enables you to access deep and complex sessions. And oftentimes, doing sessions with family members is tricky, and they can be some of the harder sessions, but you made those hard sessions look good, and you are able to get. And a lot of times, even if you're able to, follow the process and follow the steps, there are still limitations where clients at a subconscious level will hold back, or the universe will hold back. But in both cases, you were able to get to spirit releasement as part of a third session, if not more. And that's kind of quite extraordinary and unusual as well. And so, how I'd account for that is that you've got a calling because you've got a talent, and you're bringing qualities to those sessions that enable you to go deep into complex issues, from the beginning. And so that's when it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a talent to be harnessed at a professional level. But
Yes.
by getting those initial results, it gives you that motivation and energy that, yes, I really want to do this. And you're giving so much encouragement by the universe and your own abilities that really sustains you as you go through training and as you practice as well. So that was really
Hmm.
interesting. So I'm particularly interested in, and it makes sense a little bit when you think about the connection. So I've got this very interesting and connection to a woman across the pond. But prior to that, I had which has become, I shouldn't have proposed to her on the first day. Well, you're still married. How many years later?
It's 6 years now.
Yeah, so 6 years. So that's fine, whatever works. And that's working out great. And then, actually, congratulations, you've got an 18-month boy. How did you say you had?
Yeah, yeah, he's
Yeah,
the light of our life, really.
there you go.
When he's
So,
not smearing, oatmeal on his face, but
okay.
that's just how it goes.
Yeah. So interesting how you are able to then access spirit releasement type events. And
Yeah.
compared to, my initial initiation experiences were
Hmm.
tricky and difficult with that person. And I
Yes.
didn't know how to help or heal or react to her in those moments. But
Yeah.
I didn't then become traumatized by it. I didn't take a negative a view of spiritual therapies. I
Yes.
was patient and persistent. I kept learning, and when opportunities came up in future, I was able to benefit from those. So that's part of that providence, or part of that ability to look back and say, I was an intimate relationship with creation, and it was guiding me in ways at the
Yes.
time that might have felt difficult, unpleasant, unideal. I would have changed it to be different if I could have. But looking back, well, that I wouldn't now, because now I really understand it. And that's helped me understand how I can work effectively with others. And so, can you tell us a little bit about, what came up in those sessions with your wife? And who's obviously, and this can tend to happen if you've got particularly spiritually inclined people who you
Hmm.
have a good rapport with, and it can work both ways with mother and son or husband and wife. But can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about the kind of things that came up and why you think you're able to get just such unexpectedly excellent results, very early on?
Well, so that's a great question. I mean, when it comes down to the sort of emocio-psychic intuitive empathy, it can be opened through just humbling one's life and coming to, as you're mentioning, that sort of uh, intimate relationship with creation itself. It begins to speak as you, through you, and you sort of begin to sense what's going on around you. But that aside, you don't even need to have that when you can go through a very specific guided process that helps to bring forward the subconscious mind and the superconscious mind. What I noticed was when we went into our first sessions, there was a lot of of emotional and psychological challenges that were seemingly immovable. And we couldn't figure out why. Like, it doesn't make any sense how, in this simple situation, there's such a trigger to these wild emotional states. Um, from what I would consider, or anyone else watching from like just a sideline, like, why is that person flipping out right now? And it was because what we found was deeply ingrained triggers from anchor points from both early on in this life, but also these really fascinating experiences in past lives, and spiritual, call them attachments, that had happened for various reasons. And over the course of a half dozen sessions, if not more, we explored a great deal of these places, um, which to me was just absolutely mind blowing, because some of these past lives were on other planets, in other types of bodies, with other types of beings and godlike beings. Some of it was metaphorical, um, like the way that she was able to access her past lives was this interesting corridor that was leading towards the sun, and there was just countless doors on each side of this corridor that she was walking down, and each door represented going into a past life. And the way that she chose, the way that her subconscious served up the right past life to go into for this particular thing was to highlight a particular door. And she walked into that door, and she was in one of the lifetimes, and in one of the moments specifically that was ready for that was like the perfect thing, the antidote to the thing that she was experiencing. And at the time, it was social anxiety and an inability to feel like she could connect with other women in her world. She wanted to really be able to have close connections with people, and was struggling inside to be able to get there. And over the course of a series of things, she saw that there was like these past lifetimes with like these occult practices and stuff that were very dangerous things. And there was a lifetime where she was actually her and a sister type presence were a the you would call kind of like, if there was like, you know how we have the term Mother Earth, and then a bunch of people live on Earth. Well, her and her sister were a balancing act as the Mother Earth in that place, and she defected for some reason, and the planet ended up getting destroyed by external intervention. And at that time, what she realized was that an entity that we found was named Claddock. Actually, it was an odd name, but it was the name that came up. Attached to her soul at that point of deep despair, and has carried through her through many lifetimes, causing all sorts of various distortions across time. And we were able to not only see these lifetimes and get to some of the inherent understandings of what these metaphors were trying to, like the deeper metaphors of these times, but we were able to get to actually talk with Claddock and understand what its purpose was and why it attached, and some of the various things there, and get to a resolution. I was
What?
unable to get to the. Go ahead.
Well, it's just how would you define Claddock as a being? So you've taken my,
Yes,
your understanding of
dark
Sati,
force
so
entity.
dark force entity. Okay,
Yeah,
and so it's
it was a dark
interesting,
force
and
entity.
so yeah, and so people that can be earthbound spirits that are humans that used to have a body get a bit confused and attached to people, but dark force
Yes,
entities, they can feel that they're given a mission from a dark energy of the universe,
yes,
and are
and
there to
that's what it
cause.
described.
Right, and are there to cause trouble. And so, but the interesting thing is what you mentioned there is, and so we had a discussion to find out why it was doing that. And what you
Yes.
didn't say is, so in that case, we started screaming and saying, "Release her," or "Be
No,
gone, devil," or anything. So we've
no, this
established
isn't
that,
poltergeist.
yeah. But there are various ways of doing things. Some people do it in that kind of a way,
Yeah, fair.
uh, it's you didn't feel the need to do it. You felt a
No.
clarity and an inquisitiveness, and were able to carry out a discussion to go back to root causes as well, to mindfully understand what's going on,
Hmm.
and to see if you can figure out what's happening. So I really
Yes.
yeah, so I just wanted to make a note of that. What there's
Hmm.
what you did, but there's also what you didn't do. You stayed
Hmm.
calm, and you're just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I just casually, it had been there for quite a lot of lifetimes, and it was quite a dark entity. So anyway, I was chatting with it. You're like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Sound? What you mean? You weren't screaming? You wouldn't? You weren't? It wasn't an exorcism, or? And so, how do you account for that? And was this the first time that it happened? You'd had an experience with a girlfriend a long time ago, and what does this mean? But was that
Yeah.
the first time that of finding, oh, there's an attachment with a name, and he's a dark force? I've identified him because you went through some of the protocols. So, was that the
Yeah.
first time you found something like that, and how did you react?
Well, that was the first time for me, in a direct sense, that had happened, because I was using the protocols that you were laying out, and been able to, stay in that space. I was able to stay in the sort of therapeutic space and understand that, everything is of the light, and the core framework of every single being here is of the light somehow, and we're just living in various gradients of remembrance or forgetfulness of that particular core fact. And so it's being able to get every being that we encounter to some degree pointed in the direction of light again in some way, shape, or form, whether that's just the person that we're speaking to, just simply recognizing their light, or, wrestling psychically with the conversations with a dark force entity that feels like its only direction is darkness. It's trying to let it turn around and see that that's actually not true. It's its own limiting belief structure that is creating that framework. So,
I think that's great. And that's why I thought your book was so interesting, An Intimate Relationship with Creation,
yeah,
which is to see an underlying providence at work. And
yes,
people, once, if you, and so that's, even if you're facing a dark entity, you
yes,
decide to intimately go into a relationship with it, as
yes,
opposed to say, no, this shouldn't be happening. This is wrong,
yes,
and so then you're unlocking potential and living life on purpose instead of
yes,
reacting to something, and then it has the upper hand, and you're then driven by fear or misunderstanding. So that
yes,
calm clarity that you brought was great, you know.
yeah. And so, it's interesting that you bring up the providential process. And so the seven principles themselves, just to overlie
Right.
them, the first one
Mm.
is paradigm. The first principle of providence is paradigm. And when our paradigm is in check, in other words, our view of the world, when it is more and more and more and more and ever more encompassing of objective truth. Now we can never get to objective truth. Objective truth is the territory of God itself. Only
Yeah.
only the objective creator can have objective truth. Everything else is a subjective perception of the objective truth. But we can edge ever more closer. We can have far more inclusive
Mm.
forms of understanding that allows us to navigate this world in a much more skillful way.
Yeah.
And so the paradigm in this case is that we are all of the light, and we are all meant to, at very least, recognize that fact. Doesn't mean that we have to go in that direction, although that would be nice because we typically have free will. Many beings do,
Mm.
and they can choose not to go towards the light. Um, our, which brings me to the second principle, which is purpose. My
Mm.
purpose now is to help beings, all beings, turn toward the light and do so in a way that's actually valuable to them, not being forced to do so, but for them to recognize that themselves, within themselves, as that whole process unfolds. Which brings me to the third principle of providence, which is pursuit.
Mm.
I'm I'm pursuing the stages and places and behaviors and just all the little things that bring me ever closer towards being um, a light driven being and helping others do the same thing, helping them pursue that path. Which brings me to praise, the fourth principle of providence. When we get to praise, we're shedding our competitive ego, we're shedding our need to be right, we're shedding our need to be the best, we're shedding our need to be in the limelight. We're becoming humble beings because with praise, we can now look towards someone else and genuinely congratulate them, genuinely offer a, a moment of hey man, you're doing great. Thank you for the services that you do in the world. You can get to that place of gratitude now, and genuine gratitude, not fake stuff, not trying to get it, not virtue signaling or anything to that effect, but literally living the embodiment of a recognition of greatness in another being. And for a lot of people, that's not easy because it's competition, and I gotta get mine, and I gotta give something to someone in the form of genuine praise, and you would be surprised at what unlocks in your body and in your mind and in your heart and in your soul.
It's
Which
interesting. Sorry, I think a lot of people, that competitiveness, or they feel they need to protect themselves from competition, bring that down in some way, and
literally the opposite of the truth of reality.
yeah,
We
and
live
it's
in a
the
collaborative universe.
exactly, but and it's also really taking the idea that I have to do that and I need to protect
Mm,
myself. And but
mm,
if you have that sense that God or a spiritual power is
Yes,
collaboratively
that's
protecting
right.
everybody, including yourself, you don't feel so defensive,
Yeah,
because
and
you're
it's
aware.
funny. Eventually, the term protection even seems silly because
Sure.
it's like, are you protected in a feather bed with your with like the ultimate feeling of like bliss around you? Like, is that protection or is that just simply your nature?
Yeah.
Right. So
Well,
it's
you're
that's a
protected from the
down the line though.
yeah, protected from the misunderstanding that you're a separate entity that needs
Yeah,
to compete and win so that it doesn't lose.
exactly. Which so that's really good. So the fifth principle is persistence, because one of the things that ends up happening is that we fall off the path, which I've done more than my fair share, more than I care to admit.
Mm.
Um, and persistence is so important because it helps to develop the rigor that's required. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is not an easy path, but it's a beautiful path. It's not a path that is just paved in golden nuggets. It's a path
Mm.
that you have to buy some good shoes and be prepared to take a hit once in a while to the shins. Be prepared to get, your knuckles dirty as you're climbing up a seemingly unscalable path, but Providence seems to give you that next footing. But you have
Mm.
to try to get to that footing. You see, so persistence is so viscerally important.
Well,
Yeah.
that's beautiful for the healer's path. Patience
Yes.
and persistence, and that is something where you've persisted over, in an exploration of the universe over decades, and
Yes.
had ups and downs and seeming failures or seeming difficult things with a first girlfriend, but to persist and to pursue that knowledge, and it pays back uh, in the end. And so, even when you're doing the kind of training that I give, it's really a marathon, not a sprint, and it isn't easy because it,
No.
it just isn't. And anyone who's trying to sell you that it
But it is fun.
is what that's true. It is fun, but partly because it isn't that easy. If it was easy, it'd be get boring,
Sure.
and there'll be less challenge and there'll be less satisfaction once you got there in the end. But I
Yes.
love that. So persistence is great, and
Hmm.
yeah, great for healers to hear as they're on the healer's path as well.
Well, so that brings us to the sixth principle, which is prayer. Prayer is a form of narrative that you have your with source. It is a dialogue that you begin with first your subconscious mind, and then the superconscious mind, and then the ultra conscious mind, if I could coin a term, which is the mind of God itself. And what prayer does is it keeps us in alignment. It keeps us in alignment with that core narrative. We can start to catch the errant thinking patterns, the errant feeling patterns that edge us out of alignment with being persistently praiseful in the pursuit of our purpose in a good paradigm. It helps us stay in that place of walking that narrow path through all the different types of challenges. And the prayer aspect is actually the part of it where we stay in conversation with the providential engine, so to speak. It's almost like, if you could imagine it, and it's so easy to. This part isn't a complicated process. It's almost like if you were to call up your favorite restaurant and order some food for delivery. It's that easy. We just have to understand what prayer is. Greg Braden actually was a really interesting influence on my understanding of prayer, because there's what he references as the five modes of prayer. And we have, supplication, like, dear God, can you bring me this? And which is fine, but it's not really the ultimate mode of prayer. And I'd recommend going and reading that volume, because it's absolutely phenomenal. Because what prayer actually is literally stepping into the experience itself as if it's already happening and bringing forward that into your reality state. And he uses an example of how Native Americans would do that in special circles that were thin to the veil, so to speak, that would allow them to influence patterns of weather and all sorts of cool things. But I posit that there are ways to do that in your everyday life that help to amplify not only your own emotional, mental, and spiritual states, but also bring resources, bring opportunities, keep you in alignment with good luck and all these other types of things. And it's through this narrative expression of prayer, which brings me to the final principle of Providence, which is peace. Peace is what ties it all together. Peace is the disposition, the core disposition of the universe itself. Although it doesn't always look like that on the surface when we look at nature and we see some of the really odd things. The only reason why it doesn't look like peace is because our paradigm is out of alignment with what ultimate reality has actually designed. We just need to go deeper. We need to have a broader understanding. But peace is that state of being that if we can allow ourselves to just imbue ourselves in that place, suddenly the rest just becomes much more fluid. We're able to release tension, release fear, release that sense that things have to be combative, and go into that state of peace. From that state of peace, ease begins. Not easiness, but ease. There's a difference between those two things. And the way that works is unique to each individual, because peace, as an objective part of reality, subjectively expresses through us in our own unique ways. And you will experience it. And that's one of the cool things about your process, actually, Mark, is that you actually there is a fundamental peace that is found in one of the areas of the process that we go through. For those of us that have been trained in your methods, and that we take someone through their initial session to get to their own version of what peace feels like within themselves. At least something to the effect of peace. At least one of the analogs of peace, which is very important, because it gives someone a sense of, wow, I have a sense of confidence. I have it. It's already there. I just forgot it. There was a thing in the way. I already have a sense of connectivity. But there was a thing in the way. So it's right there.
That's right. It's an interesting point, isn't it? People often come and say, this is the problem that I've got that makes me ill at ease. Please lead me to peace. And so peace is where we want to get to at the end, but we say, let's just see if we can find peace already before we, as a starting point. Yeah.
Peace is the path. Getting there is sometimes strange because most people are just standing at the edge of the path, looking at the path, not on the path quite yet. And so peace seems like it's something to achieve. But once you just take that one step onto the path that already exists, you realize, oh, wait, peace is the path.
Yeah. Well, peace is the ending point that we want to get to. But in the process, as I teach it, it's the beginning point as well.
So, the irony is palpable.
Yeah. And so like overcoming the trauma, the problems, all of the negativity is just something in the middle. But we bookended either way. So we start with the end in mind. We start with, absolutely. So I'm glad you picked up on that. And that is such a key phrase. I agree completely. And also peace is an underlying reality. For me, a phrase which really resonates and I just keep coming back to is, I love this idea as well, that the conscious mind is not capable of grasping infinite reality, but it can get little glimpses and it can transcend to a degree. But this idea as well of providence, there's a protective care of God or nature. So we can look at and say, well, I don't feel very protected at the moment, where I'm not particularly happy in my family life, or I'm not that happy in this town, I'm not that happy in this restaurant. But somehow there is a protective power which has given me these experiences, and I can be at peace with what's happening to me, but I may not understand it, and so I may appear to be suffering. There may appear to be a lot of stuff happening that makes me think maybe I'm not being particularly protected or cared for. But we can find, in the end, when we leave the body and have a life review with our spirit guides, etc., at the end of our individual story, we can get some clarity and insight. But it's nice to be able to meditate and reflect and be mindful of the journey that we're taking when we're in the middle of it, and to have some sort of awareness and to be able to feel in fact, despite it all, there has been a protective care of God or a spiritual energy throughout the whole way. And that gives me a peace. And I may not even, if I again had to rationally justify it in terms of what's happening in the external world and what's happened to me in my world and what's happening in the people around, and there's pain, but there's a peace that passes understanding that resolves all of that anyhow,
Hmm.
and enables you to
Yes.
have that state of peace. And that is a very useful thing for a healer to be able to access, so that they can bring healing to others while they're going through their stuff. And healers still have their own stuff to deal with as well.
Yes.
But to be able to come to that point where you can access a degree of peace is very important. And I love that it's in the list. And the last one, I think it is the last word. And so that's, why wasn't I freaking out when the devil or one of his minions was coming at me? Because I understand the reality of Providence underlays everything, and it's not
Yes.
in competition with anything.
No.
That's and so it transcends it. There are dualistic apparent opposites, good versus evil, but a light is an underlying reality that transcends both of them. So,
Hmm.
so that's great. So there's a lovely set of principles that you can see the interplay between them and how they build. So as you've reflected on that, and is that something that because that's also something as well where I can lay out a therapeutic process, but people have to then be able to like understand it and click with it. Because there's a difference between what I say or any teacher says and
Hmm.
what is heard. And so
That's right.
the capacity to hear and understand is so important. And
Yes.
so, and there are other times in your life, you can read a book at a certain stage of your life and not really hear it, but then you read it 10, 20 years later and you click with it and you get it,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, it's like that as well, this book. Each principle is something that you don't just tap into once. These are principles. These are actually the fundamental principles of the nature of providence. And so when that original read happens, a spark is ignited. It's like an initiation process.
yeah,
It is very integrative. And as you develop through each of the principles, as you begin applying them in your own unique ways as they unfold in your day, feeling yourself bump up against some of the narratives and how those will collapse and become something better, and going through that journey, you could read it again, and as you say, something new will arise. You oh my goodness, oh yeah, there's that thing, and oh my goodness, I read through it because this is something that came through me for the world, not from me.
In what way
Um,
do you mean that? Do you, for example, connect with concepts like spirit guides, or
yes,
do you specifically access any particular type of intelligence through that channeling, or do you think about
yes.
more in terms of it connecting with an inner wisdom?
So to give there's a short answer to that, and there's a long-winded answer to that. And the short answer is we're all connected to universal consciousness. And when we ask for the wisdom of the ages, it will be presented to us, especially when our tone of heart is to present it in such a way as to be in the highest and greatest good of all included. When that when that suffix is there, what is brought forth through us can be very, very powerful, and it's non-egoic. It's not meant for the individual person
Mm,
specifically, and it's not really coming from the individual person specifically. It's using our language model, English for instance in this case,
mm,
to present the concepts and the things like that. But when I read through this book, I'm like, gosh, did I that
mm,
sounds kind of genius. Did I write that?
mm,
And the truth is, not really. It just kind of came through me. I was in a flow of consciousness, and it was just happening.
mm, mm,
And for me, that's one of the things that I really appreciate. The long-winded answer is that I came across something years ago called the Urantia book, and it was in the early 1920s when an individual who had a similar thing happen to them You'd have to get into I'm not going to get into all the details here, but they at the end of it, they came up with this absolutely astonishing model of the universe that goes right back to God. All of the beings that are responsible for various aspects of universal creation, coming down all the way to a the most astonishing understanding of what Christ is, as a universal entity, not some dude that walked around. Although that there's stuff in there about that particular type of narrative. Um, it really fascinates me how connected we really genuinely are to that which is. Isness is a function of reality. I am is a function of our experience here. And it's so powerful to tap into. And so in reflecting on that, it's really nice to be able to know that sometimes that sort of the epiphany, that sort of spark of genius that comes through us periodically, we don't have to grip onto it. It's just happening through us, for us, and for the world at large. Just ride it. Just have fun with it. It's not meant to be encapsulated per se. It's meant to be allowed forth. And so that's what I've tried to do with the Creationship is allow forth this information, not gripping it, not being like, oh, hey, look what I wrote. It's not like that. It's just if you feel called to some of this type of information and it really resonates with you, then give it a chance. Let it flow through you. Let it marinate through your universal wisdom consciousness that flows through you. That's the most important part of it. And so, yeah.
I mean, one of the interesting things is, we can talk about, there is a limit to what the finite consciousness can understand about the infinite, but we can have some sort of peace, and we can be aware of a providence. But what I appreciate as well is really bringing it forth into life, and you've done that through a creative process and a writing process. And it's informed by, and again, if the universe is going to give you information, like I can give people information on how to do spiritual therapies, I can say it, they need to hear it and understand what I'm saying, which is easier said than done. And why would people be able to understand it?
Sure.
So the universe understood that if they sent that information to you, you would be able to present it and interpret it and understand it in such a way and to make cogent sentences and paragraphs, etc. But it's also it's the ongoing action in doing that. And so that's one thing as well. When you do get into the spiritual territories, it can get a little bit wordy, and can get a little bit theoretical. And so for me, an interesting, useful next step is really taking ongoing practical action. And so that's something that you're doing by you've created your hypnotherapy website, and your brand is now the International Center for Expanded Awareness. What were you thinking of, particularly with expanded awareness?
Yeah, well, it's the first principle of Providence, is paradigm. When we're aware of more and more and more of what we really are, how we really operate, what we can really do in the world, we can bring forth the best aspects of ourselves. And so utilizing the tools of hypnotherapy as well as other ways of having conversation, sort of like the hypnotic interviewing process, we can distill and listen for the metaphors behind what the stories that are being told. And much like you've done today in this conversation that we're having now, is you've been able to create a distilled narrative, a storyline, but that is a metaphorical foundation for the processes that I've gone through. It's a very similar thing in the hypnotic arena. And so what we have the ability to do is go from the place that you are, which feels very closed, very like there's this issue, and get to more of an expanded perspective of not only what you really are at the inside, but the already inherently present, let's just call them superpowers, if you will, or powers, or resource states, or whatever that word means to you, that means you already have the goods inside you. And use that to expand the awareness around that issue that you have that's been, drilled in there, maybe at an early age or in a past life or something to that effect, or maybe some sort of influence that's happening,
Mm.
and get to the other side of that therapeutically by drawing forth the most important ways to do that. And that expands our awareness of the truth of ourselves. And so
Mm.
the reason why I call it the International Center for Expanded Awareness is because, yes, I'm here local in Canada, but because of the digital world, I call this hypnotherapy for the modern age, because we can now, you're sitting all the way across the world from me right now, 12 hours my distance, right? But we're having this conversation as if we're in the same room.
Yeah.
And that's the point, is that we can now be physically located one place, but reach a global influence, reach people globally. And to me, that is a very interesting time to be living in, because it's never been like that, at least in the last 12,000 years anyways.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to have that ability to reach the entirety of the world through this technological medium. And I mean, there's other side notions that I could talk about when it comes down to, the psychic, the emotional psychic mind and things like that, remote
Mm.
viewing and non-local perception and all that. So that's a bit of a different topic point that can be,
Mm.
bookmarked for those that are interested in that and want to have a conversation with me about that. But the core point is that we can actually reach the world now. And
Mm.
I don't have to be localized people don't have to worry about, okay, well, I'm living in this small town in Massachusetts, or in this little place in the middle of Spain somewhere, or in this place in South Africa, and I don't have the ability to reach this one person that inspires me. Well, now you can. You can go to ICEA hypnotherapy.com, or to the Past Life Awakening Institute, or to any number of other places that do this kind of work, and reach somebody who you can participate with, somebody who you resonate with, somebody who you feel like you can click with, and go through that process with yourself. It's worth it. It's an experience that has to be felt. It's something that you have to really go through the process of, to really believe it. And that's what my wife has said. Anybody that I've worked with, it's been an enlivening process, something that they didn't expect, something that's very different than the sort of unfortunate marketing campaign around hypnosis that's been happening in North America since the 1960s, kind of diverting people. Oh, you are getting sleepy, go jump off a cliff. It's dumb. It's so, it's absolutely ludicrous how stupid that is. It's a truly powerful modality. And I would encourage anybody who wants to get into this modality, do some deep work and really feel into that, because it can be something that will really help you and your clients. And if you're somebody who's looking to help yourself go through a healing process, I would consider, if just reach out to one of us and see if there's a way that we can help. See if you're suited for this process, because it may very well be the thing that helps you to translate all the things that have been going on within you in a way that's
Mm.
efficient and effective for you. And it's like, it's what's so cool about it is that it's like we almost have an unfair advantage over the other modalities, because we're tapping right into the direct source of what you are. And you're tapping into that. We're just helping to facilitate the state, and you get to tap right in there, and it's coming from you. Um, I can't speak highly enough. I've been through countless different modalities and tried so many different things, and nothing has been as potent and powerful as this process. So, if you have any emotional or mental or spiritual or even some physical problems, this may be something that can help to get to the other side of that. And as a therapist, if you're already in the natural health scene, or looking to get into natural health areas to help your clients get through something, this may very well be something that can help you to give that next step, that next level, to your already established practice.
Okay, great. So if people want to work with you, where can they contact you?
They can get me at iceahypnotherapy.com. All the information's there. I'm on some socials and things like that you can get from that website. I do a little bit of, I've started a YouTube thing where you can get some guided meditations, guided hypnosis, just to get a feel for my voice, get a feel for the process, feel the actual experience itself from, in the comfort of your own experience without anybody directly engaging in your energy. And then if you feel like this is something that really feels good to you, and you have a specific thing that you'd like to work on, you can reach out to me on the website, and we'll get you all matched up with the right kind of the right setting for you.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, that's great. So the links will be in the description. So I encourage you to check that out. As you've been able to see, Eddie's a passionate and inspired practitioner, and it's a privilege for anyone who's able to work with him. So thank you very much, Eddie, for all the journey that you've gone through to get here, the persistence that you've shown, and thanks to the providence of the universe that has guided you as well, in collaboration. And so, yeah, thank you for expanding our awareness today. It's been a pleasure to have you as a guest.
Well, I must say before ending, thank you, Mark, because without we need to stand on the shoulders of giants sometimes, just as you have, just as those
Yeah.
before you have. And I feel like I've been able to ride on your coattails a little bit, and get to a new space within my place of understanding of the world. And so, you know, those of you that are therapists and would like to advance your studies, I would highly recommend Mark's work. And just give it a chance. If you feel even the inkling of a calling towards it, have a conversation with Mark and see what's going on there. It's definitely worth, at very least, the initial conversation, and definitely, if you feel called for it, it's definitely worth the process. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Eddie. Yeah, great to see you. And we will do this again. I look forward. We haven't had time. There was so much to get through in this call. I really look forward to hearing about some of your specific case studies to give examples about the ways in which you work people. So I look forward. I won't say goodbye. I'll say see you again next time.
see you again next time. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.